tutaanza, or rather we are going to start. Again, as I introduced myself earlier, my name is Barak Otieno. I chair the Association of Community Networks in Kenya. I'm going to start off with the presentation, and then later on I will najaribu kuangalia jina. I will check. I'm sure I'll give an opportunity for our conveners to also speak. It's always good to gather. I think one of the beautiful things to Konayo in our country is the freedom of association and the freedom to be able to have groups such as this. This is what has enabled us to move or to go forward. Nawashukuru sana for this opportunity to speak to you. There are many such groups, and tunasonga mbele kwa kushikana mkono, and tunasonga mbele kwa support each other. I'm not speaking to you as an expert, but I've also been part of such processes, and that's how I've been able to gain most of this knowledge. So the objective of this session is actually to move us forward as people who are interested in solving the connectivity challenge or the connectivity problem in our country. So quickly, I had prepared a presentation. Please allow me to just take us through it. And then after that, we are going to continue with the rest of the program. So that when COVID happened, most of the internet connections were actually focused on businesses and trading centers. Mali watu wenda job. And so that meant that when we went home, number one, there was so much idle capacity in the offices that ilifika mahali, most of us who had internet connections, we actually started receiving double what we normally pay for in terms of connectivity. Yet we were so few, because up to that time, there were very few people who are working from home. So the president at the time, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, created a task force, while we were on news, actually headed by the acting director general of the Communications Authority at the time, to look at how citizens can be able to continue with their lives or to continue with their businesses. And so one of the organizations, in fact, not one of the organizations, you can see that the government itself was a key driver of this process to connect the unconnected. The Communications Authority was also a key driver to connect the unconnected. The reason I'm saying this is we are going to talk about licensing, and sometimes the conversation around licensing were adversarial. You know, like for those who run small businesses, you know how it is when you don't have a Kanjo license. They can really make life hard for you. But I think the whole idea of licensing is to level the playing field and to make sure that there is decorum. So I've been part of the ICT community for over 20 years now, normally involved in doing policy work. And what I have seen is in Kenya, we have always been gentlemen and gentlewomen. We have always developed policies that govern us together, and we've always agreed on regulations for our common good. It's just that sometimes we rarely understand. The other thing that I would like to highlight to us is, in the past, most of the investors in this space have not been locals. But we are seeing a scenario in which many of us, wacha niwaite wakulima wadogo, we are also taking up responsibility in solving problems in our country. And I know wengi wenyu, you are running all manner of networks, different sizes. Wengine mmeconnect watu 50, wengine mmeconnect watu 100, and so on and so forth. But what is important is telecommunications is a highly regulated space. It's a highly licensed space. You know, the airlines use telecommunications. The police rely on telecommunications. Our radio stations rely on telecommunications. So if the space is not governed well, Hapo ndio unakuta saa zingine unaweka KISS 100 but unasikia another station Capital hapo. There is interference and things like those, and you find that a lot of times sisi wenyewe tutaanza kupelekana kotini. We start having fights among ourselves. I know, like, to come home, sometimes there's a lot of theft, there's a lot of interference because wengine wanaeka power mingi, wengine wanaeka power kidogo, and that is why the authority in most cases has to step in. But the way regulation is developed, it is such that mambo ya kinyumbani kama hii, it's better we sort it or solve it among ourselves before it reaches a level where we have to involve the authority or where we have to take each other to court. In fact, for those who have been to court, you'll realize that the judge or the magistrate always gives you an option to go and sort the issue out of court, because a court process can be expensive and a court process can really affect livelihoods. So the picture that I am painting is that licensing is for our own good. Now, back to the story that I was giving. When this task force was set up in 2020, 2021 by the president, its mandate was to investigate how many Kenyans who are unconnected will actually be connected. For your information, we only have about 30% of the Kenyan population that is meaningfully connected. And these are statistics from an organization known as GSMA, which brings together mobile phone companies, wale wanauza devices. So if you look at the population vis-a-vis the devices out there, it is only 30% of the population that is actually connected. Forget about you and I. I know between us, if the 50 or so of us tunaambiwa tuweke devices zetu kwa meza, maybe they will reach 5,000. But there are still many of our brothers and sisters out there who hata hawana stima, they rely on Mulika. So I'm saying that to just show the opportunity that is there in the country. There is about 70% of the population that is still unconnected. The reason the 70% of the population is unconnected is in some of the places, hakuna do. Yeah. The mainstream operators normally go to places where they can be able to have a return on the money they invest on the network. You find that, kindly mute if you are not speaking. You find that in some of our villages, for example, most of us, life forces us back in the village, and then you realize that you need connectivity. Once you get connectivity, you connect 10 or 20 or about 30 of our family members, and they're able to continue with their livelihoods. So one of the things that the government and its agencies have been trying to do is to see how those people that are not profitable, in quotes, can also be connected, because it is their right. But it is not just about them being connected, but them being connected and accommodated within the current regulatory framework. I had the opportunity to participate in a CA meeting last year. They were launching their 5-year strategic plan, I think to 2027 or thereabouts. Maybe our colleagues from CA will explain. And I heard that until last year or until this year, compliance levels for licenses have been at 60%. So they have been very patient, very tolerant with us to allow many of us to support the government's effort to connect the unconnected. But in that meeting, I heard that now they are going to focus on increasing the compliance levels to 100%. So kama una run network na hauna license, inaweza ishia anytime. I know some of you by now are aware, KPLC is running their own fiber infrastructure, and wakipata drop cable yako kwa power line, wanaianua, wanaeka yao. That is the reason why conversations such as this are really important, because at the end of the day, you will find that maybe you have better knowledge on the ground or mtaa than what KPLC has. So what conversations that such as this are trying to push for is for us to find out, how do we work with KPLC? How do we support maybe government agencies like ICTA? How do we support each other in businesses? For example, mbona tukue na cable kama 50 on one pole if we can put a 96 core cable and share a couple of us. Hiyo ndio ungwana. And that is what this conversation is all about. So the community network service provider license came in, or the whole idea of the community network service provider license came when the Communications Authority and other stakeholders realized that many people were unconnected because the cost of getting a license was actually a barrier. Wakulima wadogo like you were unable to afford, say, 300,000 shillings or 400,000 shillings license fees just to start your network company. I've seen the conversations on the group. Now, the truth is, in fact, I saw a proposal, the lowest budget that one can start with is 150,000. But nimesikia there are those who started with 20, with 30, there are those who started with $1 million. So it costs money for us to start the networks. If you add licensing fees for CA, and then you add licensing fees for Kanjo, it's even harder. And remember, the end user will just tell you, mimi nataka internet ya thao. What you do with that information is up to you. So as people who are interested in solving this problem, who are interested in solving this challenge, that's why there were these conversations around a licensing framework that is friendly and that can permit community-centered connectivity initiatives. We have a colleague, Josephine, who is on the call. She will introduce herself later, and she's the one who was at the forefront of ensuring that this license is developed, working closely with the Communications Authority. Again, this effort was supported by the government of the UK Aid, in which they were trying to see how they can support government. To develop a license costs money because consultants are used and takes a lot of time. So those were the people who are in the background, and I hope as time continues, I'll be able to share. But the community network license was developed. It is a unified license. Let me explain what the unified license means. It combines an ASP, or application service provider, and a network facilities provider. So for those who don't know, an ASP allows you to provide services that provide services over the internet. A network facility provider allows you to deploy infrastructure, to build and to roll out networks. I think most of you by now, you are aware that for you to also be a technician, you require a license from CA, which is right now 3K. Only licensed people can actually deploy infrastructure. So you can see that while these regulations and these things exist, the government has really been patient to actually allow the challenges that we were facing to be solved. But at the end of the day, ignorance is not a defense. Siku moja unaweza patikana and your business will be closed down unnecessarily. So the community network service provider license was a special license aimed at encouraging connectivity in unserved areas, zile areas zenye haziko profitable, and underserved areas. Most of these are our villages or our shags, because previously connectivity was mostly in the urban centers. Now, remember, there are people who are already licensed up to this time. Actually, if you check the list of tier 1 to tier 3 operators, which is available on the CA website, you will see it's quite a number of companies. Over 100 companies, probably. That's a wild guess. I've interacted with some of these companies. Some have shut down because of the harsh operating environment. And sometimes compliance is a major burden. So at the end of the day, while the government was being benevolent in trying to find a solution for the people in unserved and underserved areas, there are also people who are complaining on the other side that what about us, who have paid millions of shillings or hundreds of thousands of shillings in license And yet now we are having to compete with people paying 10,000 shillings per year. So it was a difficult conversation, and that is why there was a compromise that a community network service provider license will actually be given to a not-for-profit entity. So a not-for-profit entity, it means that you don't exist purely for commercial reasons. Hauuzi tu, you are probably providing digital literacy services in the community. You are facilitating the kind of work that the cyber cafe does. You enable people to access government services. You are doing training. You are helping people to make meaningful use of technology areas. And again, more important. Oh, sorry. I think my internet blipped. So probably it is something that it is well known in the community, and you have support in the community. So with that background, just allow me to quickly run through the presentation in 10 minutes or so, and then I will open the floor for questions. Ndio nisijichanganye na maneno, and then I will also invite colleagues who are on the call, both from CA and those who are involved in ensuring that this license is in place, to add their comments to any of the questions that you will raise. So quickly, I'm going to touch on the following issues. What is a community network? I will talk about community network as tools. I will talk about the journey of community networks in Kenya and in Africa. Kenya is actually at the forefront of demonstrating that community networks work, thanks to the support from government and all the partners that I've talked about. I'll talk about the actors in community networks. And then I will just touch on the regulatory framework and some of the key initiatives that are driving this conversation in Kenya. Alafu, I will open the floor. So loosely defined, a community network refers to telecommunication infrastructure designed by the community to address communication issues that are relevant in a particular community. So most of you, wherever you live, you realize that people are struggling with internet connectivity. And because you are probably trained or you have interned in a company that was dealing with communications issues, you offered your skill to be able to solve the challenge in the community. So you find that way, in most cases, your neighbor can always tell you, I don't have money today, I will pay you next week, which is something that probably you will not do to a not-for-profit service provider. And that's the beauty of community networks. Community networks provide users the only way to access the internet in most cases. In many cases, they solve problems in a particular community. So maybe people want surveillance, people want to communicate, people want to watch movies, people want educational content, they solve that. They also help people in the communities to build deeper knowledge on ICTs. You'll find, for instance, the cyber cafes in our community, when people want to make returns to KRA, that's the one-stop shop. When people want to prepare documents or quotes or contract local businessmen, they do that. And again, because community networks are based in the community, money remains in the community. So you'll find, for example, if a network is in Kawangware, the people working on the network are vijana from Kawangware. So it creates employment for the youth in the local community. There are three important actors there are three important actors in a community network. Number one is the community where the community network operates. Forget about the big English and the big words on the screen. This one we'll talk about it some other day. Number two are you people, or the catalysts who support the community, usually through bringing knowledge, skills, or partnerships to the community. I was invited to this call by one of you, and most of you are contributing in ensuring that people are communicating, people are working, people are earning a decent livelihood in the community. And then there is also organizations which influence how community networks integrate into the telecommunication sector. That's why we have the Communications Authority, a significant player in this conversation. If they decide that we are illegal and we will not operate, they can shut all of us down. In fact, some of you may have seen a notice from our neighboring country, South Sudan, that they are going to shut down the internet. These things are happening, but thank God we are gentlemen and women and we are able to talk to each other. So regulators are very important players in community networks conversation. Whichever way, most of us start small, but we will grow. So at one point, we will need somebody to arbitrate if our equipment is stolen, if somebody is interfering with our equipment. And by now, most of us know that we have a regulation or we have law that prohibits stealing or damaging of telecommunication equipment. That's part of the regulatory process. As with any developments, there are challenges with community networks and any network that you build. Number one is understanding what a community network is. And that's why we are having this conversation, because we saw the license on the CA website. There is also a tier 3 license, a tier 2 license, and a tier 1 license. We have also seen a proposed tier 4 license. In fact, there is a public consultation that ends tonight. I hope wengi wenyu mmerusha comments huko proposing a tier 4 license. So understanding what a community network is and it is not is an issue. Assessing whether a community will benefit from and be able to sustain a community network is another issue. Planning the construction of the network is another issue. And I have seen all these discussions on our group. But some of these conversations, we will have them on due course with those who will be interested to continue with the conversation. Of course, some of the challenges in deploying the network come from the cost of equipment, what is called capital expenditure, the cost of operating the network. And remember, the cost of operating the network includes the cost of licensing, which we are talking about today. There is the issue of power, there is the issue of bandwidth. Currently, there is almost 30%. We pay about 16% and 15% excise duty. So we have about 31 or so percent, which we pay in terms of taxes. If we don't gather the way we are gathering, the government will never know that tumefinyika or we have a challenge. So again, Kongole for coming together like this. There's also the issue of inappropriate network designs. Yeah, even roads require a design. Otherwise, tumeona zile roundabout mtaani which cause more problems than allow vehicles to move. So again, if networks are not properly designed, there's something called mutually agreed norms for routing, yeah, which is something we'll discuss another time. And again, there's the issue of communities of practice. So kama in Kenya, I'm sure some of you might be members of the Kenya Network Operators Group, or there are very many groupings through which we share knowledge and help each other in this kind of space. These are some of the countries that have recognized community networks. And some of you might be aware, wale wamekuwa wakifollow mambo ya Starlink, you might be aware that there are countries that have actually rejected Starlink. So Kenya is actually a progressive country because of this kind of conversations that we are having. Kenya has played a critical role in actually championing community networks in Africa. And the first summit of community networks took place in Kenya in 2016, convened by an organization known as the Internet Society. I'll talk about the historical issues later. But the first community network to be established was in Kibra, and it was known as Tunapandanet. Again, the lead, Josephine, is here with us. She'll be talking about it later. And then we had Lanetu Moja in Nakuru, and right now we have almost 20. And I believe that some of you will also contribute to this effort of ensuring that our communities are connected. So the issue is not about the license. The issue is about ensuring that the unconnected are connected and the unserved are underserved. Remember, even now, the government has made a very ambitious announcement to provide 25,000 hotspots. As the association, we have had discussions with the government. We have agreed that ni sisi ndio tuta provide hizi 25,000 hotspots. At the end of the day, haijalishi which mrengo you are in, this country is ours. If you don't have connectivity, you don't have connectivity. So we as community networks are actually contributing to these 25,000 hotspots. And I'm sure many of you have probably deployed these hotspots out there as well. There's also the proposal for 100,000 kilometers of fiber. Private sector is doing, I think, 48%. Government, I think, is doing 52%. So we are moving forward to shikana mikono. And that's also the role and the contribution that community networks is making. I think I will stop at that. The other things we can always discuss baadaye. But what I want to emphasize on is the process of getting a community network. First, and for a community network service provider license. Number one, remember, this license is given to a not-for-profit. It can be a CBO, it can be an NGO, but it is a not-for-profit. Why is this the case? This is a compromise because we have tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 operators that are actually paying a lot of money to provide the same service that we are providing. Number two, the other issue is you need endorsement from your local chief or local leadership to actually demonstrate the work that you are doing in the community. Number three, the community network service provider covers a sub-county. Wale walihepa geography ama wakuingia your class. You may find that, for example, in Nairobi, you may find Westlands is an entire sub-county. So a sub-county is normally a big place. A tier 3 license covers a county. A tier 3 license, you have to pay for the application service provider license and you have to pay for the network facility provider license. For the community network service provider license, this is combined. So it allows you to sell internet at the last mile, and it also allows you to deploy infrastructure at the last mile. But that is the compromise that I have mentioned. So let me stop at that and then invite questions. Wacha niangalie. I think tutainua mkono alafu tuongee. But before that, I see Dennis from the Communications Authority. Dennis has really been at the forefront of ensuring that this license works together with his colleagues at the authority. Dennis, karibu. Kindly make a few regarding the processes. Mtu akikuja CA anaanzia wapi? What is the expectation? Because one of the requests from this esteemed group was actually to invite representatives from CA to address them. I see Josephine as well. Please be on standby to also make a few remarks as one of the people who was on the front line of ensuring that this license comes into being. So Dennis, karibu. After that, I will open the floor for any questions and so for us to see how to move forward. Karibu, Dennis.
Thank you, Baraka, and good evening. My Authority of Kenya. If you go through the category of licenses and the register of licensed operators on our website, you realize that these are classified distinctly within the framework. However, with the very bottommost tier within the licensing framework, we realize that indeed, once we were conducting consultation, we realized that this there comes a time where convergence has to maybe be managed to be able to reduce the regulatory burden on the sort of network operators who are at the bottom of the pyramid, as it were, because they are providing services just beyond the issue of internet service provision or commercial venture. This is the apex of interaction with the community. So while there are various aspects that would still maintain that a business is a business, because of course we have to make a living, it is imperative that there's a convergence between telecommunications policy, government aspirations and plans, individual and collective community understanding that society is bigger than each and every one of us. So there is a role to play. And I believe this was the government's understanding of the initiative, that there has to be specific modifications within the licensing framework that allows sort of something that hasn't really happened before. Since the establishment of the Unified Licensing Framework in 2008, you realize that this is the only category dedicated for non-profit entities. Not to say that non-profit entities must be poor. There is an opportunity for those with some business acumen who can interact with the community, mobilize resources, therefore pull together enough capital and maybe revenue in a way to be able to grow this network. Nobody said that a community network must be small. So we should not have a small mentality. We should really focus on the opportunities at hand. There are very many unconnected people. The very most painful aspect is now the cost of living issues. You find that your personal expenses are competing against necessities. So not everyone can afford a high cost of subscription for various services. Therefore, the community, by pulling together, if you have the will to have an effective community that could contribute towards the establishment and running costs for a small network, then that becomes very advantageous for the greater good. There are various issues around cyber hygiene, child online protection, the importance of leveraging what we have maybe in the past was referred to as Nyumba Kumi, not exactly to say spying on each other, but to help each other at times when maybe things can be tough, and the going has been tough in some spaces. There are also talk about perverse internet regulation. I wish maybe to just state here within my limited portfolio that government has been working very hard to ensure that internet services are accessible by the people, and that I don't think has changed. We need to just collaboratively work together, and one of the ways is having these community networks operating in a safe space, having licensed operators at various levels, grassroots. After all, we all build toward the greater good, and connectivity is provided from to tier 3s or tier 2s from the main operator. So there's, even as we propose the consideration of a tier 4 category, it is indeed progressive, and there's not an aspect to see that maybe the smaller networks are competing with the macro networks, etc. It is really how can I say it? Complementary. Yeah, the word is complementary, that these networks are complementary. There's several incentives for consideration. Maybe, for instance, the legitimacy. Of course, by having a network license, you realize that the legitimacy of your operation, I don't want to call it a business at this stage, considering if you're a small community network service provider, you may expect that you are maybe a CBO or a society or an NGO. Nothing stops having a group of like-minded individuals forming a registered, legally registered entity, the society or CBO, and that can venture into this operation. Okay, so this protects the venture and also builds trust with the consumers and the stakeholders. There's an immutable number of opportunities. As Barak has previously mentioned, there could be some crackdowns by KPLC, maybe to ensure that the drop cables, etc., are decent, well, and legal as such. So that having a formally recognized entity will, of course, maybe be of great value to the operations and can reduce the operating costs and even improve service delivery. The venture, the community network can grow better. You may realize I'm not wish to sit here and project like additional donor resources or funding of any kind. However, it is much more straightforward if you have the relevant documents, even for operating as an MSME or any of these enterprises you want to grow. Having legitimate documents trumps everything else. You could tell a good story, you could go to a conference and meet potential donors or funders or contributors, or even someone who's, I found one of the CNs in another country was receiving a large number of donations of equipment from Croatia or any other place. So, of course, with the importation process at some point, we have Kentrade portal. So when you're bringing in any equipment, there's a legitimate need for you to present bona fide documents for your entity. And of course, having a formal registration and effective controls within your organization or operation will ensure that you'll be able to navigate that process quite seamlessly. We also have strengthening of partnerships, which is something that is also going to happen more and more often through the Association of Community Networks and any other like-minded groups. There's great opportunity there. And I would say maybe as an advantage is inclusion in policy and decision making. As Barak has mentioned, many may not have been aware that the formal consultation process for review of the Unified Licensing Framework, the formal initial submission of comments ends today. I really encourage those who may have not submitted any feedback to prepare those and have that submitted by midnight, or even if it stretches, maybe tomorrow, nobody will kick you out. But I just please take your time to review the framework, the issues that were mentioned about the telecommunications contractor. You realize that if there's anything you want to be covered, usually these are done through the formal consultation process. However, with greater involvement, like there are other organizations even in the ICT sector that operate, including the Technology Service Providers Association of Kenya and DTC, we encourage, even for the Community Broadcast Association and so on and so forth, there are so many other groups that could be able to lobby or maybe interact more with the government policy decision makers at much higher level. And it's of course easier when that is in a group. Naturally, that would require some formal recognition of licensing, and that is something that will be of great advantage to the group. So Barak asked me a pointed question, like what happens when you seek to apply for a community network service provider license? Simply go to the website, download the form. There's a dummy license also provided on the website that shows you the document that you'll be expected to receive once you formally complete your licensing application. So you simply get the form. The list of requirements are very friendly. We had the privilege of discussing with several community networks on how to meet the initial application requirements, and they admit that it is not as complicated as they first thought. Documents may look a bit bulky. However, the main challenges have been about the affidavit. So if you need any help whatsoever, you get free support from the Communication Authority of Kenya. You could simply call in the number provided on the application form, or you can send an email, and you can receive feedback on guidance on any of the stages that you need assistance for. This is a free service. What I'd like maybe to mention is that in this space, given that someone may convince you that this is a complicated process or so, and there could have been some isolated instances of people maybe exploiting potential applicants, all the services are available complimentary from government officials or officers, or even through the association and persons of interest that you know, who could be able to guide you for. I do not think it should take more than a day to fill that application in terms of getting the legal references, the affidavit from the legal officers or your Advocates Commission of Work, and yes, the community. Of course, the community references, the community reference letter. There's the chief's office. There's a requirement to submit from the government official, at least at the grassroots level, who is vetting or vouching that this indeed is a bona fide entity operating within a particular community that they claim to want to provide service. This is not meant to be a restriction, but is meaning to build into part of the trust that indeed this is a community person and not someone maybe without to mine data or some other nefarious activities that they want to commit in the name of the community or the society, or take advantage of any community resources without the express ownership of the collective of the persons there. So mainly, the main issue would be to understand that while you may be a business, like you could be here in the audience thinking, I'm business-minded, I don't want these stories of communities. You may not fail to find a few like-minded people within the society whom you can operate as a community-based organization. There is aspects to give back to society, but essentially, I don't think that the profit is the be-all and end-all. Like you realize that even the requirements of this list are heavily subsidized compared to other categories, based on the understanding that this is the ultimate goal for improving society. A society cannot stand if everyone else is falling. So you need to really collaborate well. And that will even reduce issues of vandalism, because you find even if you're on a small scale ISP operating right now outside the framework, you find that there are cases where some other ISP would come and organize a group of guys to come and take down your equipment once you expand to a new area. They sabotage it, cut the power cables, etc., just to give you a hard time. I don't think that is going to be a very big problem if we are maybe like you have coalesced with the society in the area, and it doesn't have to be Nairobi. Many of the times that you find that people are really deploying the small ISPs within various pockets of the city or urban areas. We really encourage those who have the spirit and the will to venture out to the very most underserved areas of the country. I'm not promising anything, but there could be opportunity to receive funding from various sources to advance the interests in underserved areas. Yeah. So that maybe I wish to just conclude my remarks by saying that we need to move together, like as a society at the smallest level, so that we can also maybe improve the lives of other Kenyans around us and be examples to them. I'd wish to give a chance to my colleagues from CA. We have Mr. Chimbiru Gimode, Dr. Otieno, and Fred Ngaro, who can give their remarks in that order. Thank you very much.
Dennis, okay, this is Dr. Emma Otieno. Thank you very much to all the attendees for sparing time at this late hour to come on board for this important session. But I believe, Dennis, your remarks were very elaborate and on point, and you have really presented our views. So I think we wouldn't be taking much more of the time because we also conscious of the time. You're conscious of the time and the fact that people tomorrow is still a working day. So just to congratulate the coordinators of this initiative for the fact that bring people together to have this discussion, especially at a time when we're just about to go into the consultation for the other categories of licenses. And to reiterate that the authority is very committed to supporting the community networks. And we are at hand to answer any questions, to provide you with support, and to really handhold you until we achieve the big objective of connecting all Kenyans. So congratulations, keep it up. And we feel free to reach out, because I think there's an opportunity for reaching out, but not many are reaching out. Feel free, we are here for you. Thank you very much, and let's keep this conversation going. Thank you. I pass the mic to my next colleague, whoever will take the floor. Thank you.
Oh, no. Hi, Doc, can you confirm you can hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, you can
Okay,
hear you.
Thank you so much. My name is Ongaro Fred. Of course, a colleague working. It's always a good time to actually share the opportunities available to provide.
There's some noise from the background.
So the community networks are playing a significant role in ensuring connectivity, and as the authority and my colleagues have just indicated, is that we can work closely together to ensure that objective is actually met. As Dennis indicated, getting a community network license is not a long process. The team here is on standby to support you through the process. And I think we have had a session, of course, in the past where we have indicated the authority's plans to support community networks established. But as more importantly, then we will only legally, of course, be able to work with those who are actually licensed. So if you have any challenges doing the same, I think you can reach out to us. I think your leaders are in a very good position to facilitate that, so that we can make this a possibility. The coming year, we hope that we can be able to. Actually, before I go there, there is a study coming up to identify areas where then that will be supported to establish community networks. I will call upon you. I think once we settle on the consultant who will be doing the job, we'll call upon this association to work together with the consultant and be able to identify those particular areas that will then benefit more or be more impactful in delivering the objective we have here. So I look forward to working with you all and to support us as much as we can. Thank you so much. Maybe my colleague Chimbiru, you had something?
Fred, nothing much to thank the stakeholders for showing up, quite a great number in this time of the day. And I think the issues raised by Barak in his presentation are quite profound, and we look forward to continued collaboration in this space. I think also providing information for those who wish to get CA license. I see some are asking in the chats where they can get the technical personnel license application forms. I think I've responded on the chat. I think it'll be a good opportunity for them to explore and see how they can regularize their operations within the existing, just to ensure that they're able to serve the citizens within what CA has prescribed, and also supporting the ongoing process to deepen connectivity across the country. So I look forward to a greater conversation on this. Thank you.
Sorry, Hassan, are you speaking? Okay, not sure, Dennis, if there is anyone else, or we can give Josephine the floor and then we open it up. Please, if you have a question as Josephine speaks, inua mkono in the chat. I think we might need another session, but just put your questions in the chat now, inue mikono. I'm sure CA will provide a contact where we can address these questions. And also, we remain available to support each and every one of you in most of the questions that you are asking. So Josephine, as you speak, maybe those who want to ask questions, tunaweza inua mkono, and then I will follow the list on the group just to listen to your questions. Go ahead, Josephine.
Thank you, Barak. Good evening, everyone. Just to say thank you so much for making time to join the call, and congratulations to Barak for organizing this session. My name is Justin Miliza. I work for the Association for Progressive Communications in a program called LOCNET, or Local Networks, and our initiative works to support community networks and contributing to an enabling ecosystem for their emergence. We work in 3 regions: Africa, Asia, and Latin America and the Caribbean. Since 2020, we have been working in Kenya, and we are really grateful for so many of the partners that have enabled our work. Key to that is UK government, whose through support we were able to collaborate with the Communications Authority to develop the license. So as I mentioned, and also the other speakers, is that this is quite an easy license to apply for. But beyond it just being an easy license, it's also the impact of community networks in providing connectivity in rural, unserved and underserved areas, and also the aspect that beyond providing connectivity, there's also a lot of other aspects of digital inclusion that community networks focus on. We are happy, Barak mentioned, there's definitely need to have more time, and we are available to support for those who are interested, and we'll be happy to together with Barak to organize the different questions so we can go more in depth in these conversations about CN. So thank you so much, Barak, and back to you.
Thank you very much. Chris, you have the floor. Your hand is up. Please be brief so that we can conclude on time.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for this opportunity.
Hi. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Dennis was explaining something, and I think I didn't get it quite well. On some application that is elapsing tomorrow, and it was like, even if it could elapse to tomorrow, there could be no problem. I just wanted to get a clarification on that, please.
the comment I made was about the
Dennis, I think this has to
maybe.
be the public comments.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay,
Go.
great. I mentioned that my comments were about the public consultation that ends today. I think.
Okay.
So what
Okay.
I mentioned is,
Yeah.
now that some of you are getting aware of that information now, it wouldn't be really painful if you could submit it early, maybe tomorrow morning as well.
Okay.
If you find anything that is of interest to maybe
Okay.
the
Okay.
or not an
Okay.
application.
Cheers. Okay. Cheers. Thanks. Okay.
Thank you. Victor, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity for giving me this chance to share something. So I had a question here. I don't know if this is falling within the scope of this meeting or it's outside. We really appreciate the collaboration which is going on and this discussion. What I heard is about also the permits from the county governments. Because, for instance, there is a town where I am in Kisii town. You will be so surprised to realize that for you to get even a permit, right now they want almost $1 million shillings to run fiber in that small town. So I'm like, if is there a way the authority will have a way to regulate also about the county governments, because they think like we are Safaricom or the tier 1 providers. So even if you're going to run a community service, imagine in a sub county within the town, they want you to pay upfront of 700,000. I don't know if this is within this scope.
Thank you. That is a good question, Victor. That is why the community is coming together. Actually, there are industry associations. There are groups like the one you have, the Association of Community Networks. We have ISPAC. We have TESPOC, those who have had. And there's a lot of engagement with county governments for them to be able to resolve this issue. So I think the fact that we have come together like this is a very important step in tackling that challenge that we are facing. Because you see, if we are properly recognized as a business, then again, the authority can be able to put in a word on our behalf. But having said that, I don't know if there's anyone from the authority that wants to touch on that, because there are various levels of government. Dennis?
On that question, I may have to take Sabit's contact and maybe see how best we can address this outside this conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dennis. We are going to provide the contacts where you'll be able to interact with CA. I'll also share my contacts. It's also on the group so that we can take this conversation further. Anyone else who wants to speak? I'm just checking. I can't see the other names. I think Kizungu imekuwa mingi. If need, let's process what we have discussed today. Maybe if I summarize the conversation that we have had, starting with something that Dennis said, get your business legitimized. That is critical. If your business is legitimate, then you are protected. If it is illegitimate, then you stand a chance of losing your investment. Number two, there's a lot of support from the government, from development partners, from the authority and other well-wishers to those who are connecting the unconnected and addressing connectivity challenges in underserved areas. If you are legitimate, you stand an opportunity to be able to get that support. And Josephine is here from one of our development partners. She has committed, and again, I commit, as I did when I was invited, that we will handhold those who are interested, if not all of us, and make sure that together we are able to address the big challenge that is ahead of us. Remember what I said, 70% of our community is still unconnected. So tuache kupigania vitu ndogo ndogo hapo mtaani. Ndovu bado ni kubwa. We have to deal with a very big mass of people that are unconnected. I think the other point is we are going to provide our contacts. If you feel there is need for us to have a follow-up conversation, we can have a follow-up conversation in the area of ensuring that each of you obtains a license. Number two, also in areas of ensuring that we build each other's capacity. There are a lot of training opportunities which can be addressed to this group as it is without taking you somewhere else. So I think I would wish to bring the meeting to a stop at that. It is 9 o'clock. Once again, kuwashukuru for turning up in large numbers, for the questions that you have asked, which I think a number of questions have been asked on the group. I hope they have been well addressed. There were issues around. Yes, please.
Yeah, this is Gimode.
Yes, Gimode, please go ahead.
Yeah, I've attempted to respond to some of the questions on the chat regarding the license requirements for technical personnel and also community networks, but I've also provided my email address in case there are follow-up concerns that may require addressing. My email is gimode@ca.go.ke. It is in the chat, so we can probably take up those questions offline.
Thank you very much, Gimode. Na tusiogope kuingia CA. Now you know people. Ukiingia pale CA, ask for Gimode, and you will be directed to mahali utasaidiwa. It is a public office. If you need questions around how to start registering for your community network, I'm available. My number is in the group, Barack Otieno. There are also colleagues from other community networks who are here. Tutashikana mkono na tuende mbele. Otherwise, I wish you all the very best. Asanteni sana, colleagues from CA, Josephine, colleagues from other community networks, and all of us from different parts of the country who have taken time to attend this meeting. If you feel that we should have another session, we will communicate to our colleagues in advance. If you feel that we should have a face-to-face meeting, we can also make plans for it so that we can be able to address some of these challenges. Otherwise, muwe na jioni njema, and let's keep in touch. Asante.
Thank you so much.
Barak.